What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Unworthy Ministries. I'm Robert, the most unworthy person there is to be talking to you about God, the Bible, and everything else. So this is a safe place, as always, to come. No strings attached. So here at Unworthy Ministries, I have made it a point to make sure that everybody knows that everyone is welcome. There's no hidden agenda here. And I look forward to many different chances to talk to you guys about what we're going to talk about. So I started to think and started to pray about it, and I feel like the first thing that we should talk about, devotional number 1 of the channel, the first one is going to be love thy neighbor, or love your neighbor. Now that is part of the many beautiful and wise aspects of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now I know you've heard that term many times, the gospel of Jesus Christ. You might be saying, okay, well, this sounds sort of basic. What else you got for me? Well, let me tell you something. You don't really need to be concerned about revivals. You don't really need to be concerned about mission trips. You don't really need to be concerned about anything before the first thing you need to be focused on is the gospel of Jesus Christ. You can never outdo it. You can never exhaust it. You can never talk about it too much. You can never say, okay, let's move on to something greater. If every message and everything you ever listen to in church or on the radio or whatever for the rest of your life only talks about the gospel of Jesus Christ, then it still wouldn't be enough. I think that so many churches today are looking for all of these big magical moves of God and all of these different things and family life centers and mission trips and church plants and worship services. But the people need to be saved first. The people need to understand the gospel of Jesus Christ, the ABCs, if you will, of the faith. And I don't really feel as if they do. I don't really feel like that is an emphasis. So that's one thing I'm going to emphasize is the gospel of Jesus Christ and how it does not discriminate. It can save the worst of us, the most unworthy of us. So I look forward to talking about that with you. So let's get into our scripture for this devotional. I promise you it's not going to be too long. Hopefully you'll be able to listen to this on your way to work. Maybe you want to do the whole bedside Baptist thing where you haven't gone to work, haven't gone to church in a while. So maybe you kind of burned out on church. Maybe you don't even believe. I don't care. I'm not telling you who you need to be to listen to this channel. I hope that you click on this or somebody sends you this link and you like it. So, and one more thing before we get started, there's going to be a video kind of talking about why I'm doing this and kind of talking about the disgraced preacher here, the preacher that nobody wants in their pulpit because turns out I'm too bad. According to some of the different churches and a lot of the different ministries and stuff like that, they look at my testimony and they look at my past and they basically said, you know, God wouldn't have called somebody like you. So, but it's burning in my heart to tell you about, all the things that I've learned. So I myself have been burned. I'm mayor of that town. I've been burned by church more than anybody. So if you are plugged into a church, excellent. If you're not, just come here and let's just learn something together. So our scripture is going to begin in Matthew chapter 22. And we're going to start reading in verse 34, Matthew 22:34. When the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they came together, and one of them, an expert in the law, asked a question to test him. So here's some church people, religious people that are coming out and trying to stir the pot and try to put Jesus in an uncomfortable situation. Teacher, which command is in the law is the greatest? He said to them, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and most important command. The second is like it. Now, some translations say the second greatest commandment, and we'll get to that in just a minute. The second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets depend on these two commands. Okay, so the 3 points I'm going to do very briefly. Number one is, why is it so important, and why is it considered the second greatest commandment? Number two, who does it apply to? Who are we told to love? Who is our neighbor? Who is it that we are supposed to show love, compassion, and mercy to? And three, the third point is, how are we supposed to love these people? What does that entail? To get started, I'm not going to bore you with theology, even though it is a huge hobby of mine, but I know it can bore people to tears. So I want to just briefly talk about the law of Moses, which you understand. Most people, when you hear the word Decalogue, you might not know that is the Ten Commandments of Moses, but basically the Ten Commandments were God's revelation of himself and how he expects us to live and our relationship with him, and how he expects us to treat our fellow man. The first 5 commandments on the first stone, as you will, they deal with our relationship with God. You know, thou shalt have no other gods before me. That is godliness, okay? So people who are not godly and they sin against God, this is ungodliness. So ungodliness is sin chiefly against God. The next tablet, as you will, is the next 5 commandments. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, all of these things. These are how we are supposed to treat and love and react and live with our fellow human beings. Okay, so sin against our fellow man is unrighteousness. Sin against God is ungodliness. But then again, when we sin against people, ultimately we are sinning against God because they are his creation. So, in short, the first commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, that covers all 5 of the first 5 commandments into one. Okay, if you love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, then you're going to honor the Sabbath day. You're not going to have any other gods before you. Okay, and the second greatest commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, that covers the next tablet or the next 5. Okay, and if you love your neighbor as yourself, you're not going to covet his wife. If you love your neighbor as yourself, you're not going to kill him. You're not going to steal from him or her. Okay, but one thing I want to point out before we go on is that these are both equally the greatest. Okay, it's not like God is more concerned with how we treat him and then he's secondarily concerned about how we treat our fellow man. Okay, that in this translation he said the second is like it. Some translations actually expound upon that and say the second is just as important. But really it is, because it's referred to as the second greatest commandment. So if something is the greatest, it is the most important or the greatest thing, right? Well, it says the second greatest commandment. So both of these commandments are of equal footing in the eyes of God. It is the whole law. The first 5 commandments of the 10 commandments aren't more important than the last 5, okay? So just because it's called the second greatest commandment, or Jesus talks about it secondarily, or just because it deals with people and not God, doesn't mean it's not important. So this is crucial, people, okay? You have to understand this, all right? People who are involved in all of these different things in church and mission trips and singing in the choir and praise and worship and stuff like that, you have to understand the most important thing that you can do as a child of God and as a Christian are to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Okay? So that is why this is so crucial. Loving your neighbor is so crucial because it fulfills half of the 10 commandments. It fulfills the law. Okay? That's a very, very important aspect that a lot of people miss. A lot of people are going to miss this. I was talking to a lady the other day, and she was talking about her daughter, and she lives out of state, and and she goes to women's Bible study on Thursday, and she's on church Sunday morning and Sunday night, and she takes the kids to youth group on Wednesday night, and she does the potluck on Tuesday night, and the choir practice, and everything like that. And she is just staunch. She is gung-ho, all about church, all about Jesus, all about all of this. And then I said, oh, well, she sounds really nice. When's the last time you saw her since she lives out of state? She said, oh, well, she hasn't talked to me in 2 years. She hates me and says she never wants to have anything to do with me again. Okay, so all of that hoopla about Jesus and God and going to church and a building fund and parking lots and mission trips and stuff like that is worthless, okay? Because it doesn't sound like she loves her neighbor as herself, okay? This is her mother we're talking about to begin with. We're going to talk more about who it is in just a second to love, but this is her mother, okay? So if she doesn't love her mother and she's treating her mother this way, like garbage, and saying hurtful things to her and won't let her grandkids see her mother and all of these different things like that, then it doesn't really sound like that she is worried about loving her neighbor as herself. And it doesn't sound like she's too worried about loving God either, because if she loved God with all her heart and soul and mind, she would want to do what God has commanded her to do, which is love her neighbor, her mother, her father, the person next door, the person in the checkout line at Wendy's, the person at the gas pump. It doesn't matter, right? Okay? So it's very important to understand that it doesn't matter, what you profess. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you check every box Sunday school on every Sunday. You're there for every lesson. It doesn't matter if you don't love your neighbor as yourself. If you treat people like garbage and then you go to church, it doesn't really matter. Okay? So there's going to be a lot of people miss heaven for this. There's going to be a lot of people real confused with a real dumb look on their face on Judgment Day, and they're going to be going, well, what happened? Okay, well, it's right in front of you. It's right in front of me this whole time. I missed it for so many times. Okay? So love your neighbor as yourself. Next, we're going to look at is who. Who are we to love? Who does it apply to? Who are we told to love? Now, you can't pick and choose who to love. Right? Okay. The blanket statement, love your neighbor as yourself. Your neighbor is your fellow man. Okay? People you come in contact with on a daily basis. It's not just you and yours. It's not just your friends or the people in your neighborhood. It's not just the people with all their teeth in their mouth. It's not just the people who are sober. It's not just the people who claim to be Christian. It's not even people who even believe the same or even live right. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that you need to encourage sin. I'm not saying that you need to encourage the wrong way to live or say that there's other ways to heaven. I'm not saying that you should do that. But that should have no effect on how you treat somebody. Okay? That should have no effect about how you talk about somebody and how you view somebody. Okay? It doesn't. All right? I put it this way. If Barack Obama or Donald Trump or somebody famous knocked on your door and you opened the door, okay? Whoa, look at this. Oh, I better act my best part. I better invite them in. I better treat them with respect. I better, act straight and act respectful. And this is the president, But if somebody knocks on the door and said, hey, I'm trying to tell you about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which are Mormons, Jehovah's Witness, or we are, raising, I need money, I ran out of gas, can you front some money to me and stuff like that. Okay, we tend to categorize these people in a different category, right? Okay, well, we could treat them like crap and get away with it, right? I mean, screw them. We could treat them any old kind of way. We could talk about them any old kind of way. We can be rude to them and be ugly to them and treat them like garbage. But then again, if there's somebody prominent and somebody important, we better treat them right, okay? Well, that's wrong, okay? God doesn't see fat and skinny. God doesn't see short and tall. He doesn't see president and crackhead. He doesn't see all of these things. He's not swayed by the same things that we are. Okay, if a guy walks up to somebody at a gas pump with a shirt and tie and says, hey, I like your car, I really like your car, you're going to probably tend to have a conversation better with him than if a guy came up missing all his teeth, he smells like hunch punch, and he looks really rough. okay, you're going to tend to say, oh, that guy's a bad guy, I don't need to talk to him, right? Okay, so that's our minds judging off the cuff, and we can't do that. Okay, we can't pick and choose who to love. Love your neighbor as yourself. It doesn't say love your neighbor if they are a certain type of neighbor as yourself. It doesn't. It's not exclusive. The gospel and the law and all of these things are not exclusive. Okay, it is all inclusive. We're supposed to treat everybody with the same amount of respect that we treat ourselves. Okay? So it doesn't matter if this person is found guilty of the most terrible crime that you can imagine. It doesn't matter if this person is the worst person. They are no good. They are known for being bad. If you come in contact with them and you treat them like garbage, you have not fulfilled the second greatest commandment, because it says love your neighbor as yourself. It doesn't say love your neighbor if he's not guilty of a felony as yourself. Okay? Love your neighbor if they aren't a homosexual as yourself. Okay? It says love your neighbor as yourself. That has nothing to do with supporting their view and telling them that they're right, but it does have to do with how you treat them, how you talk to them, how you carry yourself with them. If you're looking down your nose the whole time about how disgusting and pathetic they are, that doesn't sound like Jesus to me. Okay? I've read this Bible 3 or 4 times through in the past 2 years. I've been real on fire for it. I've never read it this many times in my life, and I've never found anybody in the Bible where Jesus came to them and said, whoa, you're too bad for me. I got to get out of here. It was actually the opposite. He went towards the lepers. He went towards the tax collectors. He went for the people who were hopeless, the people who had nobody else to have mercy on them. And he went to them and he loved them. He treated them right. He didn't say their sins were good, but he didn't treat them like garbage. Okay? There's a very important verse that's just in the same book. It's actually Matthew. It's over here in Matthew 22, and it's talking about where the Pharisees are being pronounced woes. Okay, Jesus says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, and you hypocrites! You pay 1/10 of mint, dill, and cumin, and yet you have neglected the more important, weightier matters of the law: justice, mercy, and faithfulness. These things should have been done without you neglecting others." Right? So here are the Pharisees and the Sadducees. You know, they were very religious. They want to dot their I's and cross their T's. They want to be seen in front of the temple, giving away money to the poor so people know they do it. They want people to see that they're fasting because they want to appear to be righteous on the surface. They want to appear to be good and godly on the surface. But really in their heart, they're not. Right? They're not. They just want to do the right thing so that others can see them. It talks about them tithing and doing all of these things, right? But Jesus said, look, you forgot about something more important. You know, justice, mercy. Having mercy on the lepers instead of just casting them out and saying they're unclean. Having mercy on a tax collector and letting him still worship in the synagogue instead of casting him out to the curb and saying that there's hopeless for him. Okay? So this is an example of Jesus showing, all throughout the gospel, Jesus showing mercy on people who the church or the Pharisees of the day did not show mercy on. Okay? And this is why he says, love your neighbor as yourself. Okay? Treat everybody the same, regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of whatever stigma might be attached to their name. Okay? That's what it is. That's what it has to do with. And thirdly, we have how. How are we to love these fellow men of ours? Listen to what one of my favorite commentators, John Calvin, listen to what he says right here. When he says, "But as we are too much devoted to ourselves, Moses, in correcting this fault, places our neighbors in an equal rank with us. An equal rank with us. Thus forbidding every man to pay so much attention to himself as to disregard others. Because kindness unites all in one body. Okay? So how are we to love our neighbor? How are we to love our fellow man? We are to love them and treat them like we would want to be treated and like we would treat ourselves. We are supposed to see them as we see ourselves. Right? It comes down to humility. Okay? When you read a newspaper article and it said this person was arrested for this. Okay? In your head you're going, well, I know I'm better than him, right? Oh, I've never done that. But really the right approach would be, man, I know that's got to be hard for his family. I bet his family's really having a difficult time. That's mercy. That's loving your neighbor as yourself. Because if it was you in those shoes, you would know exactly what you deserve. You would know exactly what you need. You would know exactly what you would want people to say about you. Okay? But when it's somebody else, it's not that big of a deal, right? Because it's not you. Well, that's not loving your neighbor as yourself. That's just loving yourself, right? So the same respect that you think should be given to you, the same way that you want people to view you, to treat you, to talk to you, that is the way that you should view and treat others. Now that sounds real basic, okay? But I'm telling you, people miss it, okay? People are missing this, okay? They're going and they're doing all these good things according to them. They donate to charities. They're members of such and such church. They sing on the praise team. They do outreach, but they treat people like garbage. Okay? They run over people and they treat them terribly. Okay? But they're doing all these outward things and it's really not accomplishing anything. Because if their heart was godly, if the Holy Spirit had really grabbed a hold of their heart and taught them the things of the gospel and taught them the things of godliness, then they would be broken and humbled over their own sin, and whenever they see others, they would be more likely to show mercy on them. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Right? So, how are we supposed to treat them? We're supposed to treat them, see them, view them as we would want ourselves to be treated. Okay? If you're in Walmart and you're standing in line, the self-checkout, and the next aisle over, you hear somebody over there just blasting somebody you know. You know them personally. And they're just talking about all these things they've done and how guilty they are and how sorry they are. Okay? You would hear that and, man, that kind of sucks for that guy, right? But then, the next day, you hear somebody doing it to you. You hear somebody running your name in the mud. You hear somebody talking about what you did and how sorry you are and how pathetic you are. Oh, you're going to hot to trot right back over there, aren't you? You're going to go over there and you're going to tell them what's up. You're going to go over there and say, look, watch your mouth. You're going to be very gusto about standing up for yourself, okay? But you weren't very gusto for standing up for the guy before, okay? That's because in the natural legality of our sinful hearts, we want to promote us. We want to watch out for us much more than we want to watch out for anybody else, okay? But if you love your neighbor as yourself, if you do unto others as you would have them do unto you, okay, then you're going to treat them, you're going to stand up for them, you're going to act towards them the way that you want people to act towards you. And all of this might sound basic, but I promise you, God takes it very, very seriously. And people need to understand that. People need to understand that it's not so much about how much money you've given away to the church. It's not so much about all these things that you've done for God. Okay? What's more important to God is how you treat people. It's how you treat Him. If you treat people like garbage, then you're not treating him good either, because he's commanded you not to. So next time you come in contact with somebody that's from a different side of the tracks as you, that might smell a little bit worse than you, okay, that might not drive a late model car, that might not be in your neighborhood, that might not live a lifestyle that you approve of, okay, instead of throwing stones and stabbing in the back, why don't you just love them as you love yourself? Okay, you don't have to. You can't pick and choose who to love. You don't have to hold their hand and be their best friend, but you don't have to treat them like garbage and talk about them, right? Now, in closing, I want to thank you for sticking with me through this devotional, and I want you to please comment, like, subscribe, and please comment of any prayer requests or anything that you would like to pray with you about, anything like that. There's going to be more videos to come. I just want to say this. When we pick and choose who to love, when we love certain people because of their status in this world, and we overlook other people, there's a verse that talks about the least of these. The least of these is a parable that Jesus told, and he was separating the sheep from the goats. Okay, he was separating the godly from the ungodly on Judgment Day, and he told the godly, blessed, go into the kingdom of heaven. But he told the same thing to the same parable to the wicked, and he said, into everlasting damnation prepared for you. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me nothing to drink. I was naked, you didn't clothe me. I was in prison, and you didn't visit me. And they're going to be shocked, and they're going to say, when did we see Jesus? When did we see Jesus needing us? When did we pass him by? When did we overlook him? When did we neglect him? And he's going to say, I'll tell you, what you did not do for the least of these, my brethren, you did not do for me. Okay? So when you don't love your neighbor as yourself, when you treat people like garbage that don't fit your category of good, when you do that, you're really treating Jesus that way. And you're going to be held accountable for it. Father, please help us love our neighbor as ourselves. Help us not view people in different classes of how we should treat them. Thank you for showing us your way to live.